time. We'll go right into it.
Okay, Susan, are you ready? I'd like to call this meeting to order. I wish to make the announcement to show compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, known as Senator Byron M. Baer. Open Public Meetings Act amended and supplemented Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of the State of New Jersey, passed 1975. Notice of this meeting was given by adopting the annual schedule of location, time, and date, sending copies to the Home News Tribune, posting in Borough Hall, filing a copy with the Borough Clerk within 7 days of the annual organization meeting in this body. Before we rise for an invocation, I just wanted to announce and recognize our new Borough Clerk, Susan Jackson. She's going to be with us on a permanent basis, and we appreciate her being here, and welcome her to the Borough of Metuchen. And now I ask you to rise for an invocation given by Acting Council President Pete Camerano.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd just like to take a moment of silent reflection, honoring all the veterans on this eve of Veterans Day, as well as all first responders as we swear in a new officer tonight.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Susan, can you do a roll call, please?
Councilman Wallace. Absent. Councilwoman Rasmussen.
Here.
Councilwoman Insero.
Here.
Councilman Grazel.
Here.
Councilman Camerano.
Here.
Council President Muldoon is absent. And Mayor Valhalla.
Here.
Flying light tonight. Your Honor, just in the interest of time, I'd like to see if everybody's agreeable, we move the agenda session down to after the discussion on the bond sale and go right into the resolutions, if that's okay? Everybody's okay with that?
Fine with me.
I will move Resolution 2014-210, resolution authorizing an executive session for the purposes for personnel matter.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're going to go into closed session.
Sorry, guys.
We'll be back in a little while. Carries. We now have a resolution which will appoint a new police officer.
Your Honor, I move Resolution 2014-211, appointing police officer Patrolman Christopher Fiore.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays?
Any nays? Okay. Chief, Captain, if you would come up, and Chris, would you come up, please, Mr. Fiore? And you can invite anybody that you would like. Lieutenant, why don't you come up too, please?
Right there.
You're going to do the oath? Hey, Dennis, slow with the oath.
If you have any family, if they want to come up, take pictures.
Any family, and you can move around,
You can
take
move around, we
pictures
don't
from
care.
anywhere.
You can take them
Okay.
up here, over there.
And our attorney, Dennis Murphy, will institute the oath.
Do you want to face?
So everyone gets to see it. I
I,
State your name.
Christopher F. Fiore,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the same
to the same
and to the governments
and to the governments
established
established
in the United
in
States
the United States
and in this state
and in this state,
under the authority of the
under the
people,
authority of the people,
and that I will
and that I will
faithfully,
faithfully,
impartially,
impartially,
and justly
and justly
perform all the duties of
perform all the duties of
Metuchen Police Department, or Metuchen Police Officer,
Metuchen Police Officer
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Go away.
You're going to pin this on and don't draw any blood. Get it? Okay.
And little holes.
Stick 'em, stick 'em.
I told him no blood.
Congratulations.
You know, evenings like this are always a pleasure when we are able to hire another officer to our police force. It is one of the finest forces in the state of New Jersey. I've had the pleasure of working with them on many different issues, and I want our chief to say a few words. Chief, would you come up?
Thank you, Mayor. First, I'd like to thank the Mayor and Council for allowing us to hire Chris. Chris, congratulations. Welcome aboard to the Metuchen Police Department. I'm sure it's going to be a little bit different than from where you're coming from, but I'm sure you're going to be able to bring some knowledge and experience with you. And I wish you a safe and productive career as a Metuchen police officer. Good luck.
Captain, would you like to add anything?
No, it was a very vigorous process. We had a lot of great candidates. And from the very first interview, Chris stood out above everybody. Every interview that we had, I think there were 3 different levels of interviews. Every single time, Chris stood above everybody else. And he's here for a reason, so I welcome him tonight.
I'd just like to reiterate what the captain and the chief said, and he really did. Out of all the candidates that I've ever been involved in the interview process, he was heads and tails above the rest.
And Chris,
I'm looking forward to a great career for him.
Yep, so am I. And Chris, again, welcome, and we wish you well and safe speed during your operations here, working with our police force. You're really welcome. We appreciate you being able to be hired by us. So thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Mayor. We now have a presentation from the Family Arts Council with Katie Massey. Please come forward.
I was really hopeful that crowd was for me, but I'll take what's left. I want to thank Councilman Grazel for inviting me to speak about Family Arts of Metuchen. Do you want me to close the door? Is that... to speak about Family Arts of Metuchen, which is an organization that we founded a year ago. So Henry Chang and I actually sat down a year ago, almost to the day, to talk about how we would put together this organization, whose mission is to foster arts programming for the children of Metuchen. It's meant to build upon and complement the work that is done in the arts already by the Arts Council, Metuchen Arts Council, the Borough Improvement League, and then also the Junebug Committee. We were told to start off small, and we didn't. We actually dove right in, and to give you some background, I used to live in an apartment off of Town Green in Natick, Massachusetts, and on that Town Green every summer they held a children's concert series that ran on weeknights throughout the summer. And remembering back on those events, I really saw them as great community events. Families would bring out their picnics, everybody would gather together, the kids would enjoy the music, the parents could socialize, and that's what we were really going for when we were pulling together these events. We actually started not with a summer concert series, but with a winter concert series, which was meant to serve the same purpose, which was actually to bring people out of the woodwork during the winter months when people aren't usually getting out. And so on Sunday afternoons, families would gather at the Old Franklin Schoolhouse for the Snowflake series, which was a series of 4 concerts that ran through the winter. And following that, we put together, very similar to the one in Natick, Massachusetts, a summer concert series, which again was a series of 4 children's concerts, which was held outside the Old Franklin Schoolhouse in their newly fenced-in area. Families were invited to bring picnics and enjoy the concerts that were put on during those weeknight events. We were fortunate to have a number of performers come out. Some of them were local favorites. So, for example, Danny Adlerman and Preschool of Rock, both Metuchen residents, were some of our first performers. Other New Jersey performers, including Bays and Yossi, Mr. Ray, and we are also lucky to get some artists on tour who came through our concert series, who included Martin Swinger from Maine and Kevin Kamerad and the Cooper Fly Puppet Troupe from Michigan were included in our series as well. We were also very lucky to have support of a number of different organizations and individuals in that first year. So the Arts Council was very generous and provided a donation to help us get started. Danny Adlerman also donated a concert for us to help us get off the ground. And the Borough Improvement League was very helpful just in terms of providing the space, the sound, all of the help that we needed to really get that concert series going. And the concert series was a tremendous success, both of them. We saw a huge range in ages for the audience, so we saw babies, but we saw all the way through age 8 coming with their parents. For the indoor concerts during the winter, we sold out almost every single concert, so filled the schoolhouse to capacity. And during the summer, we filled the outside. We had up to 150 audience members attending the concerts during the summer events. And like I said, families brought picnics. They all met up together, and we really saw that community feel that we were really striving for and that we'd modeled after when designing these to begin with. This year, Family Arts of Metuchen again plans to put together a Snowflake series and a Sunflower series. We've recently finalized the details for our Snowflake series, which will be starting in January. All concerts again will be held on Sundays at 4 o'clock. The first begins on January 18th and will feature Danny Adlerman, again bringing our local favorite back. On February 22nd, we have 2 female performers from the group Fuzzy Lemons out of Hoboken performing. And then on March 29th, we'll again have Martin Swinger returning from Maine. He was a big favorite in the summer concert series, and he'll be returning for a winter performance, as well as for a performance for adults, for grown-ups, the night before. So I hope that everybody can make it out to those. And the concerts will last approximately 1 hour, and tickets are $4 at the door on the day of the event. People can get involved in Family Arts of Metuchen in a number of different ways. One is, of course, by coming to our concerts. We pay for our performers through ticket sales, and so it's really important that we get as many people to the concerts as we can. Second, we're also looking for sponsors and donors from local businesses, from residents who can help support Family Arts of Metuchen's mission. Currently, we can bring in solo musicians, but we're really looking to build our programming to more diverse groups and cultural events to really broaden what we're bringing to the children of Metuchen. So, for example, with additional funds, we could bring in dance troupes, puppetry guilds, and larger musical groups such as bands. And that would be a huge benefit to the children that we serve. And then finally, we would love to have people volunteer to help us plan events and staff events as they come up. Anybody who's looking for more information about Family Arts of Metuchen can visit our Facebook page or our website, which is familyartsofmetuchen.org. And if you are interested in volunteering or donating to the organization, you can email us at info@familyartsofmetuchen.org. I want to thank the council again for inviting us to speak about our program. We've been really happy with the support we've gotten from the residents of the town, and we really enjoy seeing how much the children enjoy these concerts. They really get into it, a lot of smiles, they're all getting up and dancing, a lot of laughter, and that's really why we've brought this in, is for that feeling of community, but also to make sure that the children in our town are really getting exposed to different cultural events and musical events throughout the year. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions from the council or comments?
I'd just like to point out, over the last 5 years, there's been an amazing renaissance of the arts in Metuchen, and your organization that you and Henry founded is another example of that, and it just makes life that much richer and rewarding in Metuchen. So we really appreciate your efforts, and I'm sure it's going to continue to grow.
I hope so. I hope so.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have a presentation to the Metuchen Rescue Squad.
Hi, my name's Peter Fairclough. I'm the Vice President of the First Aid Squad, resident of Metuchen, live at 3 Goodwill Place. I'm also the crew chief on Thursday nights. Unfortunately, the person who was going to make the presentation to us tonight has been delayed. His name is Ben Deutsch.
No, I believe he's here.
Good timing.
Perfect. Perfect timing, Ben.
Well, unfortunately, I was in the middle of Walmart when I got the call.
Oh. I didn't text you or email you just to, set this up that way, did I?
I'm kind of also trying to avoid getting an escort coming here.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I don't have the check with me because of the somewhat last-minute, notification. But I can at least say that this year we're going to be donating $1,500 to our local rescue squad, care of that show. And I know these guys are always there for us. It makes me proud to know that we were able to raise that kind of money for you guys. And of course, hopefully next year, if we figure out what we're going to be, we can do at least that good, if not better.
Ben, we'll find a spot for you.
Okay, I kind of need to know as soon as possible.
Well, we're working on it. Okay?
Okay, and I'd just like again to express the gratitude of the First Aid Squad to Ben for all of his efforts on our behalf. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you again.
Thank you for giving us this time.
Thank you.
We now have a discussion on the appropriate authority issue.
This is our labor attorney, Art Tebow. Why don't you come up here, Art? It'll be easier. And is there a mic there, or you can use this mic? Okay.
You have to get pretty close to the mic in order for it to pick you out.
All right.
So if you could do that.
Can you just give us a brief idea of what the appropriate authority ordinance does, how it works? Okay.
Sure, Mr. Mayor. By statute,
any municipality that creates a police department has to establish that department by ordinance, and that ordinance must establish a line of authority from the chief of police to the governing body. It's a chain of command, essentially. There has to be civilian oversight of the police department, so the statute calls that the appropriate authority. That is, that individual, that body, that entity that is responsible to adopt the rules and regulations of the department and also for the discipline of the members of the police department. The appropriate authority can establish policy or follow the policy of the governing body, and essentially oversees the police function on a day-to-day basis, subject to limitations as provided by statute that rest solely with the chief of police. Okay. And I'm going to open it to the council for discussion now, questions or comments.
Just so I understand, so that individual who we designate is responsible for rules and regulations as well as policies of the department?
Right. So long as they're not, so long as those policies don't touch on policies that may be governed by the Attorney General's guidelines, that may be criminal policies, but policies such as, how the department might be operated in certain areas. For example, one policy that would rest with the appropriate authority or with the governing body would be the number of people that are assigned to the detective bureau. The chief would make the assignment, that's his call, but if the appropriate authority thought there were too many in the bureau and they wanted more boots on the street, so to speak, that would be a policy that would be adopted by the appropriate authority, or by the governing body, frankly, could do that as well. But it would pass from the body through the appropriate authority, assuming it's not the governing body, down to the chief of police.
So we as the governing body do have the authority to ask the appropriate authority to, or to instruct the appropriate authority on certain policies or pertaining to that? So, so in essence, the policy portion of the appropriate authority isn't really resting entirely with the appropriate authority. We still would maintain that?
Well, you as a governing body, you always have the authority to establish policy for the borough. The appropriate authority, provides again, just a line of authority between the governing body that's not here on a day-to-day basis with the police department, that is. And that's really the role, is a civilian oversight almost on a day-to-day basis, and that's really its purpose. You can designate the governing body as the appropriate authority of the police department, but it doesn't always work.
No, I wouldn't. I would, and I'm not advocating for that.
Right. Yeah, it just doesn't always work. But you could. I mean, theoretically, in theory, you could do that.
I mean, you could have the entire council be the appropriate authority?
You could. I wouldn't suggest that. I wouldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't advocate that. It's difficult to handle, frankly, to have the entire body do it.
It would also. It wouldn't seem logical to have a member of the legislative body, which the council is, necessarily doing that function, even though you could. I don't know if that would be the most prudent way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, you can. It can be, some towns have it, most towns have it as the administrator or the manager. Some towns have it as the mayor. Some towns designate as the, they have like a subcommittee, they designate a committee to do it. I mean, most towns have it as their chief executive, their administrator or manager, who's here day to day, to handle those things.
Is it possible to split the responsibility so the governing body is setting the policy and the designated appropriate authorities handling the other issues?
Well, you have to designate who the appropriate authority is, or what body it is, whether it's an individual as the BA as it is here today. But the governing body still has a right to set policy, because it can direct the BA that this is what we'd like vis-a-vis the police function here.
Yeah, I'm a little confused, because if I read both, I think some of the information you provided to us over the years, and our current ordinance, it's pretty clear that the appropriate authority has those responsibilities. Now, is that because we did that by ordinance, designating it? Or?
Well, the appropriate authority in your ordinance has the right to finalize discipline and to adopt the rules and regulations of the department.
I think our ordinance goes further than that.
What policy would it? Well, I mean, if there were a specific policy that the governing body wanted implemented, for example, a big one was for a while, and I don't even know if it came up here, Bill, it was like the use of the not like an EpiPen, something like that, right? Wasn't that an issue here, or was it?
Was it
am I thinking-
the Narcan?
Maybe that was it, to reverse the effects of, some particular drugs, right? So that's a policy, right? Potentially, that's a policy. If the governing body said, well, we want our officers to carry that, or we want our officers to carry the defibrillators or something like that, that's a policy. The governing body can adopt that as a policy, direct the appropriate authority to establish that, and then because the administrators here day to day could do that. I don't know that there's a need in the ordinance to split the authority because you already have it.
Councilman?
Yeah, I
Sure.
was wondering if you could clarify something. I had always been under the impression that the bright yellow boundary line between the governing body and the police department and the chief and his command structure was they would have a non-delegable right to dictate how resources were deployed on a day-to-day basis, make decisions in terms of how the department ran on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis. And it kind of surprised me that you used the hypothetical of where the governing body could say, well, we want more boots on the street, and we want to take some people out of the detective bureau. So I'm kind of losing a sense of where that boundary is, because if someone had asked me on what side of the line that kind of a decision would be made before you spoke tonight, I would think that would reside with the chief of police.
Well, that's a policy decision, because you don't have to have a bureau.
Okay. All right. So in other words, what
I mean,
you basically...
you couldn't tell the chief that I want somebody established. I want to post at the corner of Main and 27. I want somebody sitting there. I want a guy there all the time. That's a day-to-day decision. But the policy of whether I'm going to have an investigative portion of the department, that's a policy decision.
Okay.
What about the number?
Number of police officers?
No, number of detectives.
Yeah, I mean, if you said we can have a bureau, but we only have one, you're going to have one detective. That's all we're going to give you. That's all you're allowed to have. Everybody else has to be out on the street. That would be your call. Now you're going to have the chief advocate that I need a detective for this reason or that reason. But certainly, if the ultimate decision is no, you're going to have this number of police officers, as you have that right to do now, and this number of detectives are going to be in the bureau. That's a policy decision.
So as I understand it, it seems to me what you're saying is that the appropriate authority really is a point person who's available on a day-to-day basis to address issues of pressing concern, and that the governing body, meaning the Borough Council, can overrule that apparent authority at any time.
Yeah, I think you have that ability, as the governing body, because the statute, and I think my letters address this, if you looked at the letters I wrote back in 07 and 08, they talk about that the governing body would act as the police function either through the appropriate authority or as a body, as the entire body. If you discussed a particular policy that you wanted to have and you wanted to direct it, you would make that decision, and then Bill would then implement that, the administrator would then implement that and pass it on to the chief of police, or, somebody could call the chief in and say, this is what we want to do. But you have that power. The appropriate authority function is, it handles issues that may arise on a day-to-day basis that might impact policy. Again, adoption of rules and regs is a necessary predicate for the appropriate authority, and implementing discipline or finalizing discipline. All that's laid out in your ordinance. But other things you still have power to decide how the police function and how those resources are going to be used. You have budgetary power. You have appointment power relative to how many officers you have in this force and how many you don't have. So this still all rests with the governing body. I mean, that power doesn't rest with the appropriate authority. So I think, Councilman, I think that you're probably right. It's more of a day-to-day, somebody here, somebody to oversee, somebody to resolve issues, address issues as it relates to the police function, or as it relates to the chief of police, frankly.
Okay, thank you.
I guess the part that confuses me is if you look at the ordinance we did adopt, it basically says the borough administrator is designated as the appropriate authority for all matters relating to the police function.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's a very definitive statement, that that person has the authority for all matters relating to police function. So I guess that's where my confusion comes in. And I understand the budgetary powers we have and appropriations and stuff, but short of that, I mean, that's where I'm confused, because to me that contradicts the idea that the governing body can set policy for the department.
Well, I mean, I think you have that without specifically having to say it in your ordinance. I mean, I don't think your ordinance divested you of the ability to make appointments
That's a
and...
pretty definitive statement to me, and I'm not an attorney, I just stated a Holiday Inn Express or something. but-
No, I understand that, but the borough, but I witnessed a swearing in of an officer. I'm assuming that the borough administrator didn't hire that officer, didn't decide to uniform that officer and equip that officer, and decide that I'm going to expend this kind of money without some authorization from the borough council. That, the hiring of a police officer, in your example, could be theoretically subsumed within the all matters relating to the police function.
So then the appropriate authority answers to the governing body?
Of course.
Oh, okay, on all matters?
On all matters.
Okay.
Yeah. No different than any other matter within the, if it's the administrator, no different than any other matter which may exist here in the borough.
And that would be by statute, not by ordinance?
That the appropriate authority would answer to the governing body? Yeah, because the governing body still retains the power over the police function. It's designating a chain of command.
And I guess we could always change it if we, you know.
Of course, sure.
I got it.
Yeah.
I got it.
Could we just kind of take the example of discipline, and you could kind of fill in for us how that should work? In other words, I'm assuming the command structure the police department institutes in the first instance any disciplinary action and hearings. And then eventually, once the chief and/or his command structure makes a decision, the appropriate authority is supposed to be the one who says yes or no to the ultimate discipline?
Yeah, the way your ordinance reads and the way that it works, both by statute and how it works out there with everyone else, is that the chief is charged with responsibility by statute to enforce the rules and regulations as promulgated and adopted by the appropriate authority. So the chief has to enforce those rules and regulations. Failure to do that would subject the chief to his own discipline by the appropriate authority, okay? But the chief then enforces those rules and regulations, whatever the violation might be, and recommends potential discipline. Now, in your ordinance, any discipline that is a reprimand or less, or a counseling session, a written reprimand, verbal reprimand, rests within the authority of the chief of police. The borough administrator generally does not get involved with the minutia of a reprimand. However, if the chief of police is going to charge an officer, suspend an officer, remove an officer, or demote an officer, that is his purview in the first instance, but he has to get approval of the appropriate authority in order to do that.
And ultimately, does the borough council, as the governing body, have the ultimate power to say yes or no on that?
Well, in a legal sense, no.
Okay.
In a practical sense, yes. Because if it were an issue such as removal, there should be discussions between, in the first instance, the chief and the appropriate authority, and then in the second instance, to the point where we get to, are we going to do removal? It's something that I would recommend that the borough council be advised of, that this is the step that we're taking, and we have the potential removal of an officer, and kind of, talk that out in a personnel session, an executive session.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilwoman? Councilwoman?
No, I mean, I'm still struggling with as you just said, you would advise them to be informed of it, but there's no requirement. That's kind of what I'm struggling with. And how do we tighten that or can you, so that there's a more, you can say we have the authority based on our, the powers of the governing body to change or remove or replace or an individual or a process. But that takes time. It's not something that can happen in a situation where you have some immediacy, which fortunately we don't have any situations, right? I'm just looking down the road.
Well, I mean, I think one of the ways that towns address that issue is if the appropriate authority does something that the governing body is not satisfied with, right, the appropriate authority has to answer to that. And the appropriate authority, generally being, if it is the administrator, is subject to removal, on a vote of council, to the extent that the council believes the appropriate authority is not acting in its best interest of the town. So that's one of the checks and balances that's available to you. Now, and again, it's not immediate. I mean, there's no perfect solution to it, but I think, someone sitting in the administrator's seat, if that's still the appropriate authority, understands the role that they play, particularly when you're talking about, discipline and removal. There should be some kind of communication between the parties.
And just for the public's knowledge, I mean, it's a system right now we have where the borough administrator is indeed the appropriate authority, and it works well. However, we know that the individual functioning there is not going to be there in the future. So the question is now a time to re-examine the ordinance and the appropriate authority with, somebody new coming into that position down the road.
Right.
And that's really why I wanted to have a discussion and try to figure out the best way to handle that.
Yeah, I mean, it's always, it's always important to reassess positions, especially when you have a change in such an important function within the town, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tebow. We appreciate your time.
Can I ask one question before you leave? Yeah. In so much of government, you often have the term, you name an individual or their designee. Can you do that with the appropriate authority?
No, the appropriate authority by statute has to be, somebody has to be designated in the ordinance. I've never seen one, and I don't know if it would pass muster if you said the administrator or his or her designee, or the mayor or his or her designee. I don't know that would float because it talks about a designation by the governing body, so that's a specification, right?
I ask because it's very common in government, particularly at the state level, where hearing officers are frequently the commissioner or their designee.
Right.
And that's exactly how it's worded. So I was just curious if you could do that to give yourselves the flexibility to address the concerns we may have.
Yeah, I don't know that would pass in this particular function. In your ordinance, your hearing officer can designate someone, or your appropriate authority can designate someone to serve as a hearing officer in his place to get a fresh set of eyes to look at it. But when you're talking about the overall function, I think the law would require an absolute designation without a designee. Now, if the individual was unable to fulfill those, for example, an illness and injury that put them out for a long term, then I think the function could fall back to the entire governing body because you oversee that function anyway. If there was an impossibility there.
Okay.
Okay, which might alleviate some concerns.
Okay. Any other questions?
No, thanks.
Thank you again.
Sure.
Mr. Swisher, you're up next.
We have a discussion for the municipal audit.
Right.
Okay. As you know, we've just completed the 2013 audit.
Why don't you come up?
You want to sit down?
Sit down at the table and be more comfortable. Just speak into the mic, that's all.
Very good. Okay, so we've just completed the 2013 audit, and I just want to make a few comments, and I'm not going to go through it page by page or anything like that, but just give you a little bit of an overview of the report and more the audit process and what we do. A lot of times people think when we're doing an audit that we're here to do an operational audit to determine if the entity is performing efficiently. Okay, that's not really what we're hired to do. We're hired to do an audit for compliance and to determine if your financial statements are fairly stated and according with the applicable standards. So what we do is we assess risk. We come in and we ask questions of people. Where might there be problems? Okay, for instance, anything that deals with cash would be considered a problem. So we're going to gear our audit program to look at areas where there could be problems. Then what we do is we perform tests. We review your internal controls, the checks and balances that you have in place to make sure that they're working. And then once all that work is done, we're able to form an opinion. And in this audit report, we have an unmodified opinion, which is a clean opinion that basically says your financial statements are fairly stated. Also, we test for compliance. As you know, the state of New Jersey has all these thousands of areas that each town must comply with. And if we find any areas of noncompliance, we're required to report those in the audit report. This year we did have two minor findings, and you'll be addressing those later on in your corrective action plan to hopefully correct those going forward from this point. The other item that's everybody always wants to hear about with their audit report is where does the surplus stand? The borough has done a very good job of managing their surplus over the last couple of years, as evidenced by your most recent bond rating, where you got the AA rating. A lot of that depends on your surplus, not just the dollar amount, but where it's going. And the borough has, over the last couple of years, been able to raise their surplus. The rating agencies, when they look at that, they don't want to see surpluses going up and down. There's actually the administration and the council has a plan on what they're doing with their surplus, and that really becomes more important nowadays when you have this 2% levy cap. Okay, because in the past, if you dwindled your surplus way down, you could always just raise taxes, and it wouldn't be a problem. But now with the 2% levy cap, if you get your surplus down too low, and you don't have surplus available to balance your budget the next year, you can't just raise taxes. Okay, you're forced to look at services or bodies to get yourself back below that 2% cap. So the borough has done a good job in managing those surpluses over the last couple of years. And that kind of leads me in a little bit into the second item that I was asked to speak on today, is the upcoming bond sale. We're later on, you have a resolution beginning the process to have a permanently fund your outstanding debt. We have a lot of our ordinances are out in bond anticipation notes right now. And after a certain period of time, you're required to bond those, to permanently fund those. If you don't, you have to raise that whole amount in your budget. And obviously, we don't have room for a $4 million increase in raising our notes that are out there. So we're going to be having a bond sale. There was some discussion on whether or not to include just the ones that were required to be bonded, or to include the other ones that could be bonded. And you had hired a financial advisor that was able to put together debt schedules to really show that the impact from just this new issue would not be significantly different if you authorize just the smaller amount or the larger amount. By going to the larger amount, you go a little bit further out. But again, what you're able to do with that is to lock in the low interest rates that are there right now. Okay, I mean, nobody really knows where the interest rates will be 3, 4, 5 years from now, but you do know where they're going to be right now, and by locking in now, you're able to secure that lower rate. You're taking advantage of the good bond rating that you have right now, and so obviously, I think it became very obvious that the longer and including all the issues were the right decision to make. As everybody knows, we've kind of had this. This issue will not necessarily impact the bump that we have coming. As everybody's known, for years we've had this with the debt from the municipal building that we're in now. The way the principal payments were structured, there's big bumps in the amount of debt service that needs to be paid, starting next year, and that kind of tying back to what we were talking about before with the surpluses. By having that extra surplus available, it will allow the Borough Council to temper some of the tax impact that you would have of having such a large increase in debt service. Okay, you can increase debt service is exempt from the levy cap, so it wouldn't be a problem going over the 2%. But everybody up on this on the dais there realized that, well, we don't want to see our taxes go up 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10%. So by developing and building up this surplus that is available, along with hopefully from other things, that will mitigate and hopefully, keep taxes under control and still pay for all this debt service for the projects that you've done over the last couple of years. I'd be glad to take any question anybody had on the audit report or about the bond issue or anything like that.
Now, you said our rating is AA2, isn't it?
Yes. Yes.
Right. And that's the highest rating?
Well, AAA. You could be AAA. It's virtually impossible for a town the size of the borough of Metuchen to achieve that AAA, because it's all based on the ability to grow within the community. The borough of Metuchen is a fairly well-developed community. Okay, the places that are AAA have a lot of land where you can develop more and more and more like that. And so, I mean, you're really as high as you can get from where you're at. Again, and it's attributed to your finances, really.
Okay. And you said the audit is a very clean audit.
A clean opinion, unmodified, 2 minor recommendations.
Which we are addressing.
Which you're addressing the corrective action plan going forward, yes.
Okay. Any Counsel?
In terms of our overall debt structures, are we within recommendations and
okay.
guidelines?
The state of New Jersey has a limit of debt. It's at 3.5% of your average equalized valuation, and the borough is way, way below that that dollar amount. I mean, I think the exact amount that you're allowed to borrow, it's in the audit report, is you actually have the ability, if you wanted to bond another $52 million, which obviously you're not going to do, okay? But of that 3.5%, the borough is at 1.03%. So you're about a third of the way of what you would be allowed to borrow according to statutes. So for a borough your size, your debt is in very good shape.
Thank you.
Your debt capacity, I should say.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Swisher, thank you.
Very good.
Thank you for your time.
Have a good night.
Good night now.
A little confused, but I think now we're going to have an agenda session. So I move we open the agenda session.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any items for the agenda session? Could I have a
I
motion?
move we close the agenda
Is
session.
there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I'm going to open it to the public now for any questions or comments about anything on the agenda. Just please step forth and state your name and your address.
Hi, my name is Chris Wachowski, and I'm at 73 Summit Avenue. Just wondering if it would be possible to talk about those two items of noncompliance in sort of a simple way that, you know, for a layman, basically.
Okay. You want to address
You
that?
let the auditor go.
Yeah,
a little while. Let's see if we can do this. The first recommendation was that the practice of issuing confirming orders be discontinued. A confirming order is where a invoice is generated that is dated prior to the date of the purchase order. And I don't know if that's understandable, but under municipal finance law and budget law, we have to actually requisition for an expenditure, which is then turned into a purchase order, which then is signed by the finance officer, the administrator, and the department head, which then authorizes the individual to go out and purchase the item. Sometimes what happens is when departments are going and looking to get quotes for items, a vendor will generate a invoice, and then when they are actually given the purchase order, they just attach the invoice that they've already generated to the purchase order, and it looks like the goods or services were actually ordered prior to the issuance of a purchase order. There are times, honestly, where items are ordered that have not been requisitioned, and the finance officer and I are working with the departments to make sure that that understands. Sometimes that's by individuals that are seasonal types of folks who work maybe for recreation or the pool and haven't been informed of how to go about purchasing in the required legal way. That may be too much.
It's about as simple as it gets. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm trying.
It doesn't really
trying.
sound like, you know.
Okay. The second one really is concerning receipts ledgers and the ability of certain departments to keep up with maintaining a daily record of actual receipts that come in. And again, that's something that we have to work with the personnel. We will have some people coming in from the Department of Labor and Workforce Development to help with those entries. The problem that we have here is that a good number of employees wear a number of hats. and sometimes the day-to-day activities of one of their other hats will impinge with their ability to make entries in a timely manner, and that's just something that we have to deal with on a personal level.
Mr. Borth, may I ask a question?
Sure.
Both of these two issues, are they the same department or different departments?
Well, in the first instance, there were a number of issues, and it was sort of a cross-department. In the second, there were one or two departments that were consistently with a problem.
It's accurate to say there's no question of anything other than just being recorded in a timely manner, correct?
Yes, and then sometimes the categories in which it was recorded. We've also updated our computer programs to deal with the issues so that it makes it easier. But in most instances, it's just the constraints of time and other things going on.
Any other questions or comments from the public? Hearing none, close that section of the meeting. We now have a resolution. Councilwoman, you're going to read it?
Do you want me to read it from here?
No,
Okay.
from here, please. Is there somebody to accept it?
Yes.
Why don't you come up, please?
Go sooner, right?
Nice to see you again, Scott. Just stand up here. Okay. Okay, this is a resolution recognizing November as Lung Cancer Awareness Month. Whereas, in 2014, an estimated 224,210 people will be diagnosed with lung cancer in the United States, and 159,260 will die from the disease. And whereas lung cancer is the #1 cause of cancer deaths, far outnumbering deaths due to colon, breast, and prostate cancers combined. And whereas lung cancer has only a 16% 5-year survival rate. And whereas the National Lung Cancer Partnership, a lung cancer advocacy organization made up of physicians and researchers working together with survivors and advocates, is dedicated to doubling the 5-year cancer survival rate in the United States by 2022. And whereas the Borough of Metuchen demonstrates its commitment by making lung cancer a public health priority in supporting advocacy work on behalf of lung cancer patients and all those at risk for the disease, and by offering support and care for all those in our state and community affected by lung cancer. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Mayor and Council, on behalf of the residents of Metuchen, do hereby proclaim November 2014 as Lung Cancer Awareness Month in Metuchen, New Jersey, and urge Metuchen citizens to join our efforts to defeat lung cancer. And I present this, Scott, and if you would like to say a few words.
Thank you. Thank you to the council for having me here again. I really appreciate the time. I know you have a busy agenda, so I'll keep my statement brief.
But if you want to speak to the microphone,
thank you.
so it will be recorded.
I do have a request. I did send something in on your Facebook page that I hope you can post for the townspeople to see. I think it would be helpful if they're looking for information on anything related to lung cancer. It is the #2 killer in the country. It's the #1 killer in our state. I've had so much opportunity in the last year to reach out to many people advocating and learn so much about how much more needs to be done. And I think having these meetings and getting the word out is going to make a difference. I've already seen some movement. There was a big decision made today by CMS in Washington that will allow people on Medicare to have screenings covered, and it's going to save tens of thousands of lives. So it's important. 1 in 14 will be impacted by this. And I think you know my story. I lost my wife. She grew up in this town. She loved this town. I love this town. Lived here for 13 years. I know how much people care. And I think the more that people learn, the more information that's out there, the more change that will happen. So thank you again for your time.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you so
Bye,
much.
Scott. Take care.
All right, I move the communications consent agenda items 1 through 4.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're now at that point where we have reports from the council. Council President Camerano.
Your Honor, I have no report.
Okay. Councilwoman Rasmussen.
Okay, the Shade Tree Commission had sent out some quotes to vendors, and at this moment, none of them have replied. So I guess we're going to see what else we can do to make an alternate plan. But I also found out from the New Jersey Forestry Department that there is a deficit of trees in the state of New Jersey, and we're thinking maybe the vendors had a hard time filling some of the requests. So maybe we'll, maybe we'll hear from them in the future. And also, the Shade Tree Commission is continuing to work on the community forestry plan update. We'll be meeting tomorrow and finalizing some of the things that we think we can work on and submitting it to the consultant to write up. The Environmental Commission continues to gather more documentation to complete actions for the Sustainable New Jersey certification, which is due November 23rd, and I've reached out to some other entities in the borough, and I've been getting some great help and assistance, so to those people I thank you. And the Development Commission is very excited about the associate tier designation through Main Street, New Jersey, that I believe that Councilwoman and Sarah will be speaking about. And we are looking forward to working on whatever actions are needed to be taken next. And the Chamber of Commerce has some activities going on. Right now, Scarecrows on Main Street contest and voting will be extended until midnight, November 22nd. And the Farmers Market is ongoing until also November 22nd. On November 30th, the 61st Annual Winter Festival Parade will be at 2 p.m., and it will commence at Edgar School. On December 5th, the Christmas tree lighting will be at 7 p.m. at the Borough Improvement League building at the old schoolhouse. And on December 9th, there will be the holiday installation reception and awards for the Chamber of Commerce. And I actually have one more thing that I'd like to speak about. I don't know how many of you people are aware in town that Angela Sealski, right after Halloween, asked for people that had extra candy, and it seemed like this year there was a lot of extra candy, to bring it over to her house, and she was going to pack it up and send it to the troops. Well, she collected about 100 pounds of candy, and today she went to the post office to mail it, and it was like $175 in mailing. So I am asking, and maybe I'll ask my fellow council people, if anybody would like to chip in and help her defray the costs of the $175 for mailing candy to the troops. She did a beautiful job. She enclosed individual letters to them so that when it gets delivered, they will know about what happened. So she gave me her permission to give her address and her email in case you would like to contact her about making a donation. So it's Angela Sealski, 68 Forest Street, of course, here in Metuchen. And also her email is Angela Sealski, which is ANGELASIELSKI @gmail.com. This way, you can contact her and see if she still needs some donations. And that's my report.
Thank you. Councilwoman and Sarah.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to thank Metuchen High School and all the volunteers for putting on the Metuchen Seniors Inc. luncheon a few weeks ago on a Sunday. It was very well attended, and everyone had a very good time. On Wednesday, December 3rd, the Metuchen seniors are looking forward to being invited to the Metuchen High School fall production of All in the Timing, a collection of one-act plays by American playwright David Ives. This is an annual tradition where they're invited for a free dinner at 5:30, followed by a dress rehearsal of the show, which features comedies or comedy dramas focusing mainly on language and wordplay, existentialist perspectives on life and meaning, and the complications involved in romantic relationships. So they're looking forward to that. The Board of Health won't meet again until January, and the Metuchen Municipal Alliance meets this Thursday at 7:30 p.m. And I'll just follow up briefly on something Councilwoman Rasmussen said. Yes, last week we found out from the Department of Community Affairs that Metuchen was one of 15 towns selected to become one of the next towns in the associate level of the Main Street New Jersey program. The Main Street New Jersey program works to revitalize Main Street downtown districts using a concept called the 4 Points approach, which you can look at for yourself if you go to preservationnation.org/main-street. And the 4 approaches talk about things like design, promotion, economic restructuring, and organization. And there's also another set of 8 principles, and basically it involves a lot of getting people together, and we'll be talking about that over the next couple of months. And that's my report.
Thank you. Councilman Grazel?
Thank you, Mayor. The Finance Committee has had a series of meetings recently, and the fruits of those meetings have been reflected in the meeting we had here tonight. The Finance Committee consists of our Borough Administrator, Bill Borth, our Borough CFO, Rebecca Cuthbert, Mayor Vahala, Peter Camerano, and myself. During the course of our finance meetings, we went over the audit with the auditor. We went over the construction and design of the program to convert the revenue anticipation notes into bonds. And that's a segue to one of the resolutions that's on tonight, which is 2014-212. As previously reported, Rebecca Cuthbert, our CFO, reported to the Finance Committee that increasingly stringent SEC federal regulations have required that boroughs update on a certain database called EMMA, certain statistics regarding their financial wherewithal and resources, so that investors in municipal bonds, either those who've made investments, those who are tracking investments, or those who are about to making investments, can get to a readily available site and review certain statistical data. Quite frankly, that's not much of a development for Metuchen, because you can do that simply by looking at our audit. But in any event, our municipal advisor has been retained not only to help us with the construction and design of our debt service, but also to help us and perform the service of making sure that we comply with the SEC documentation and provide the appropriate statistical data for EMMA. That resolution is on tonight for approval. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Dennis, do you have any report?
No, Mayor, I have no report this time.
Bill, do you have any report? I have no report. I just have a couple brief items. One, the fire department responded to 29 alarms in October, 125 hours of fire alarms and emergencies, 67 hours at drills and training and meetings, and the cadets and advisors volunteered 101 hours. A reminder again to let Susan know who would be going to the parade from the council. The parade is on November 30th at 2 p.m., correct? Mm-hmm. Okay, and recently I was able to speak before the Chamber of Commerce at their meeting. It was well-received, talking about the developments and the planned developments in the downtown, and the Chamber was very enthusiastic in supporting our efforts in that area. And that concludes my report.
Your Honor, I move the new business resolution agenda, items A through D, encompassing resolutions 2014-212 through 2014-215.
Excuse me, Councilman, my understanding is that each of these needs a roll call vote.
Uh-oh. Nobody told me that.
Oh, they did. Well, you didn't ask. You didn't ask me.
Can we do them all together or separately?
No, I would do them separately, just to make sure that we're
All
not
right,
in
I
trouble.
withdraw that motion, and I move resolution 2014-12.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Got a roll call.
A roll call.
Okay, roll call.
Camerano?
Yes.
Brazel?
Yes.
Insero?
Yes.
Rasmussen?
Yes.
That's it.
Okay.
Your Honor, I move resolution 2014-213.
Is there a second?
Second.
Councilman Camerano?
Councilman.
Yeah, that's right. I get the idea.
Okay.
Yes. You call it worse.
Councilman Grazel,
Yes.
Councilwoman Insero,
Yes.
and Councilwoman Rasmussen.
Yes.
Your Honor, I move Resolution 2014-214.
Is there a second?
Second.
Council President Camerano,
Yes.
Councilman Grazel,
Yes.
Councilwoman Insero,
Yes.
and Councilwoman Rasmussen.
Yes.
Sorry.
Your Honor, I move Resolution 2014-215.
Is there a second?
Second.
Council President Camerano,
Yes.
Councilman Grazel,
Yes.
Councilwoman Insero,
Yes.
and Councilwoman Rasmussen.
Yes.
My
Your Honor-
first,
Oh, go ahead. I'm
I
sorry.
was going to tell her my first job was called Councilwoman Rubin for the first 6 months, so you're doing great.
Quite frankly, I like the last names. I thought that was a refreshing change.
Yeah, that's the way it was set up, sorry.
That's okay.
Just to make sure that everybody has signed
Yes.
the paper.
Everybody has signed it.
On the audit, okay.
Your Honor, I move the new business consent agenda items E through L encompassing resolutions 2014-216 through 2014-223.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Your Honor, I move the bill resolution in the amount of $8,556,944.48.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Is this a direct?
Have an appointment of William Hoover to the Traffic and Transportation Committee.
Do we need to move that, or?
Yeah.
I move the resolution of William Hoover for the opening on Traffic and Transportation Committee.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Your Honor,
Introduction of an ordinance.
I motion that ordinance number 2014-07, creating Chapter 158 of the Code of, I don't need to read that, actually, be introduced and take it up on first reading.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Susan, if you could read the ordinance by title only.
An ordinance creating Chapter 158 of the Code of the Borough of Metuchen entitled Smoking and to prohibit smoking in public places.
I move the ordinance be passed on first reading and published according to law in the public hearing set down for, what's it?
December 1st.
December 1st.
December 1st, 2014.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's a roll call vote.
Council President Camerano?
Yes.
Councilman Grazel?
Yes.
Councilwoman Insero?
Yes.
Councilwoman Rasmussen?
Yes.
Now going to open it to the public for any questions or comments. If you have any, please step forward. Just state your name and address.
Scott Reed, 6 Weston Street. I have a question about the ordinance that you just voted on. There's a section in here that there's a designated smoking area going to be,
Yes.
and I was curious, what's the reason behind that?
The reason behind the designated smoking area is it deals with more with our volunteers, particularly the fire department, where we have people that are, we know, we're not condoning smoking, but we do have volunteers that volunteer their time and they do smoke. And to have somebody come in and volunteer, maybe not even from our town, and then to say to them, hey, you're in violation of an ordinance without an area, we're allowing for a small area for them to be able to smoke.
It's also an issue of space. It's just 2 sections, as you can see in the ordinance. And it's really because if you take the areas we're talking about and you go 50 feet, you're no longer, you're on somebody else's property, you're in that area. All the other buildings, we set up the distance. It just didn't work. There was a lengthy discussion at the last meeting about this. And it's really a practical matter of, where we do want to discourage it, but in the cases you do have somebody, there's nowhere to go.
Okay.
And it's the public works area, and the fire department are the two sections that have the designated areas, while the other buildings have the distance.
And the designated area will be a place where people who are non-smokers will not be impacted in any
That
way.
is the goal.
Okay.
That is definitely
I mean,
the
that
goal.
was my
The
concern.
other
That is
thing,
definitely-
Scott, is that we didn't want to push it onto somebody else's property.
Right.
Or even onto the public sidewalk.
Or onto the public side.
Okay.
Okay?
I had seen some discussion in the newspaper, and I wondered.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
if
really
this
the
had been
goal.
cons- Thank you.
It was a good compromise, too, actually. It worked.
Any other questions or comments from the public? Hearing none, I'm going to close that section of the meeting.
Then I move for adjournment.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for a good meeting.
Clock's wrong.